We haven't started yet. Yeah, I'm doing a practice. Thanks. Bye-bye then.
Most people take breathing for granted. After all, spontaneous breathing is a natural process that occurs whether we are awake or asleep. But for some people, every breath is a challenge.
Because it's on the TV. It's not on TV. It's... No, I can't see it there.
So how long is this sample?
400 million people suffer from respiratory insufficiency. Every year, nearly 20
Thank you to all those joining us early. We will be getting started promptly at 11 a.m. Eastern Time in just about 2 minutes.
Presentation about this. Can't see the screen. You can touch it. Okay. You have. That's good.
Okay, it is 11 a.m., so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, this is Barrett Boone with RedChip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with Inspira Technologies, which trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker IINN. With us today, we have Joe Hayon, President and co-founder of Inspira Technologies. We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we'll open up the event for Q&A. I will keep everyone's lines muted throughout the presentation. Users may ask a question anytime by using the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom window. Now, before we begin, please allow me to read the Safe Harbor Statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical fact should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. With that said, I will now turn the call over to Joe. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. In Inspira Technologies, we plan to revolutionize acute respiratory care. The next 7 minutes, just 7 minutes. In the next 7 minutes, you're going to hear how we at Inspira are going to revolutionize acute respiratory care. Listen carefully to a company that is developing disruptive technologies and disruptive products to minimize the need for invasive mechanical ventilation. Good day. My name is Joe Hayon. I'm both the president and co-founder of Inspira Technologies. You know, unfortunately, this could be you. Every single year, year after year, millions end up on invasive mechanical ventilation. They need to say goodbye to their families as they get placed into a coma, as they get intubated with this thick tube getting all the way stuck, all the way down their throats. All this while the machine, this high-risk mechanical ventilator, is breathing for them while the doctors try to take care of the underlying medical problem. And this can go on for days. It can go on for weeks. And this could be me. This could even be you. Our innovative, Inspira Art is creating a new class of respiratory care. The Inspira Art is designed to minimize the need for invasive mechanical ventilation. Now listen carefully. It actually means that with the Inspira Art, you would be treated while you are awake. Yes, awake. And still breathing, spontaneously breathing with your own lungs. So there's no coma and there's no intubation. Now let's watch this video together.
Most people take breathing for granted. After all, spontaneous breathing is a natural process that occurs whether we are awake or asleep. But for some people, every breath is a challenge. Over 400 million people suffer from respiratory insufficiency. Every year, nearly 20 million end up on respiratory life support, and millions die. Doctors facing patients with these treatment challenges administer supplemental oxygen using devices such as nasal cannulas. And when supplemental treatment is insufficient, their only option is to induce coma, intubate, and place the patient on mechanical ventilator, that is not only expensive and complex to use, but puts the patient at high risk. This further emphasizes the huge gap between basic respiratory care and an intervention that should be used as a treatment of last resort. Inspira's early extracorporeal respiratory support system, the ART, bridges this gap, delivering the right level of care. Introducing Inspira's ART, the solution designed to boost oxygen saturation levels immediately. The treatment aims to be administered by a trained clinician, eliminating the need for ICU-level care. Let's understand how this breakthrough technology works. Inspira's dual lumen cannula is inserted into the jugular vein. Blood with low oxygen saturation is continuously drawn through the cannula's intake lumen into the ART. The innovative proprietary ART's pump circulates the blood at an optimal rate of 1,000 cc's per minute, while preventing thrombosis and hemolysis. The blood flows to the oxygenator, which oxygenates the blood and removes CO2, with only a minimal drop in blood pressure and low shear force, protecting the red blood cells. The oxygenated blood returns through the lumen to the jugular vein. Even though the ART treats blood in low volumes, it is expected to raise the patient's oxygen saturation to 95% or higher in 60 seconds. This device brings immediate relief to the patient while being easy to operate without the need for ICU expertise. Inspira's ART sets the new standard in respiratory care, bringing hope to millions.
So invasive mechanical ventilation is actually much, much worse than it looks. It poses so many risks to the patient. It may overinflate the lungs. It may bring on ventilator pneumonia, and it has impact on the muscles themselves. But the worst part is that more than 50% of patients don't make it home because they die. They die. Now, on a lighter note, Inspira, since its 2 years IPO on the NASDAQ, we have worked towards establishing ourselves as a trend leader. We have filed several patents, with many of them already being granted. We have signed an OEM agreement, one of the leading divisions of a large medical device company. We have signed distribution agreements for hundreds of millions of dollars. And yes, we have world-renowned key opinion leaders who have joined our advisory board. Now, the Inspira ART is a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity. And alongside the Inspira ART, we have developed two amazing devices, both an ECMO device and both a non-invasive blood sensor, which are the building blocks towards the Inspira ART. Now, these two amazing devices, one is currently in human studies, the other to be submitted to the FDA in just a few months. And they in themselves are significant assets to Inspira. Now, we are working hard and running towards the finish line. Just take a look at this graph, to this table. We have planned clinical studies. We have planned FDA submissions. We have planned FDA clearances. And yes, we plan the deployments of our systems in hospitals and much, much more. So hold on to your seats as we run towards the finish line. Now, going back to invasive mechanical ventilation, we really need to unlock your independency on invasive mechanical ventilation. I welcome you today to join Inspira's revolution. It's been a great pleasure presenting to you today.
Thank you. We will now open up the call for questions. Participants should indicate that they have a question by using the raise hand tool. I will then enable you to speak. You may also type in your question using the Q&A tool. You have one question here from Carmen Kilgore, who asks, This is a audio question, so we'll just go ahead and skip over that. We do have a couple more questions coming in from our live stream. Where do you see this company in 3 to 5 years?
Inspira is on path to bringing multiple products to the market. We are working towards the strategic distribution agreements, strategic agreements with large medical device players. So hopefully in the next couple of years, Inspira will have multiple products in the market or in the marketplace. And again, we would be collaborating with a large medical device company. And over time, I think that we'd be able to have a very strong penetration and impact on the market, maybe even revamping and reshaping the respiratory care market, turning Inspira from a RedChip potentially into a blue chip company.
Harold asks, how much cash and what's your cash burn rate?
Okay, so last financial reports will, everybody's filing reports in the next period, but the last financial reports do give an indication of about $60 million in cash as of September last year. At that stage, we did inform that we had about a $900,000 burn rate. So you can get an idea that we will probably start off this month just over about $12 million.
Here's another question from our live stream. Is Inspira looking to take significant market share from the major players in the industry today?
We hope so. I think the market has put a strong focus on Inspira. We proudly say that we have medical device companies that do manage dialogue with the company. We already have one large medical device company who has entered an OEM distribution agreement with us. And yes, we are targeting both the invasive mechanical ventilation, which is worth billions. We also have a product for the ECMO market, and we also have a product for non-invasive blood censoring. And we believe that this together is going to really put a lot of pressure on those big players because they either move with us or they could potentially be left behind.
What types of new technologies can come out of these developments?
So going in the sense, if we look at the different products, we're talking about technologies around the ability to monitor blood without physically touching. So for example, the high-level blood sensor, which is also a strategic component system within the art itself, is able to use an optical sensor to monitor and screen blood and using algorithms, machine learning, to actually take those screening information and convert it to key blood parameters. So that allows us to be able to monitor blood continuously and potentially at real time. So any type of treatment where blood is involved and it's flowing through a tube, or what we call extracorporeal procedures, and this may be an ECMO, this may be an Inspira, this may be an open heart lung procedure, we would have the ability to monitor a patient's blood condition and how the system is performing at almost any given time. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Within other products, we'll see other capabilities. I don't want to go into too much detail because they haven't been exposed, but our products are designed to have a huge impact on the market, provide safety so that we can use extracorporeal blood oxygenation at a very early stage and potentially minimize the need for that huge invasive mechanical ventilation market.
We have a question from Andrew who asks, can you please give us some additional detail on the first in-human study of the HYLA blood sensor?
I can only just share with the market at this stage is that at a leading hospital in Israel called Shiva Medical Center, they are ranked in the top 10 in the world and very well known for research and development and clinical studies. Yesterday, a patient, just 2 days ago, the patient was basically underwent an open heart procedure. During that open heart procedure, our sensor was used to monitor the blood that was being circulated during that procedure. And we were able to collect data. And obviously that data is obviously to be analyzed and results with other studies will be shared at some time.
Here's a question from Todd who asks, can you highlight the value proposition of the ART over current ECMO and or ECCO2R technology?
Sure. So ECMO, we also have our own ECMO, the Alice. ECMO is used as a last resort. It's actually when everything's failed. So a patient may even be beyond mechanical ventilation, really in a bad state, and they'll use ECMO to pump out the person's entire cardio output, oxygenate the blood, and hopefully try safe. But there's a very, very high mortality rate. So more close to about 80% because of the condition of the patient. The echo is also a way where someone's got a heart problem, there's a problem to basically circulate the blood and remove CO2, and that's done through a procedure where there is a catheter inserted into the chamber of the heart. What we're talking about is a much bigger market. We're talking about a patient that would be on an oxygen mask, they'll be treated for acute respiratory failure, and when nothing helps and nothing is available really today, they'll end up being placed on invasive mechanical ventilation, which requires intubation and coma. And this is where we plan to come in and to close the respiratory gap. In other words, we'd come in at an early stage, a much earlier stage, where the patient is deteriorating, and hopefully be able to remove just a very small quantity of blood, like you saw in the video, oxygenate, remove the CO2, and be able to elevate the patient's saturation levels in just minutes, and therefore prevent actually deteriorating to invasive mechanical ventilation and other worsening medical conditions that require even more acute medical treatments. So we're talking about a market that is around millions and millions worldwide, some estimated to being even up to about 20 million patients each year.
We have another question from Harold, who asks, when do you see revenue starting?
So we have not found or reported revenue forecasts. I can only just say that we have distribution agreements. In other words, we have distributors that are very interested to work with us when we get to market. What we have shared in our last corporate deck is that next year we will hopefully deploy our Alice machine, and that will be followed hopefully with orders within a couple of quarters.
How have physicians been reacting to your technology?
In my opinion, very favorably. I can tell you that we have about a dozen key opinion leaders that are on our scientific advisory board. Amongst them, we have the president of the Extracorporeal Life Support Organization. So what is extracorporeal? Anything that has blood flowing through it, ECMO, open heart surgery, cardio. We have the president of the international community on our advisory board, and we are very, very proud of that. And that's alongside several other world-leading physicians. Of course, the company does manage dialogue with physicians, perfusionists, doctors, and the medical industry. And I can tell you that there's a lot of feedback, a lot of interest. And I think as well, I do want to go back to that OEM agreement, the fact that Inspira has already been able to enter a signed agreement with a division of a multi-billion-dollar medical device company who is quite a leader in the cardio and the heart, lung, and bypass sector, I think is an important message in itself.
Here's another question. After you conclude the regulatory process, how do you plan to penetrate the healthcare systems worldwide?
So interestingly, we believe that to penetrate the market, we need to have distribution partners. We have to have collaboration with medical device companies, and this is what we're working to, and we're working towards that progress. We also need to have key opinion leaders and docs that would be willing to use that equipment. And that's the whole thing. You've got to make sure that you've got experts, leading perfusionists, leading doctors who are interested in being the first users of your product in a clinical situation. And you have to have a strong infrastructure supported by large medical device companies. And these are our targets. This is our strategy. And we believe that we continue to work towards creating and accumulating these assets towards market penetration, adoption, and hopefully have a huge impact on the overall global medical industry and market.
Here's a follow-up question. Will you be focused on global sales or mostly in the US at first?
Thank you for the question. So of course, we will start off in the US. We see the US with FDA approval potentially being the cornerstone to developing our capabilities and penetrating the market. But yes, we do plan eventually to enter other continents, other regions, and you can already identify these steps because we've also already entered into distribution agreements with the countries in Europe and in Israel.
Do you think Inspira can have a significant impact on people living longer?
I'm not a physician, but hopefully our technology will prevent the deterioration. In other words, by us being able to provide extracorporeal direct blood oxygenation at such an early stage in relation to solutions today, potentially we would be able to slow down or prevent a patient deteriorating at a much earlier stage. So the earlier you can pick up and treat a patient, the less likely they're going to get to a place, a medical condition of no return. In other words, they've deteriorated so much that there's not much that's going to help them. And if you look at it from that point of view, that there is that potential. Now let's look at invasive mechanical ventilation. It has over a 50% mortality rate, and a lot of it is associated to the complications brought on by the machine itself. So should we be able to provide a treatment that prevents the complications or risk that IMV, invasive mechanical ventilation, is exposing patients to, then we do have the potential to do that. And again, ECMO is the last resort. So until we've used the product in humans, that's my answer. But I think Inspira has the potential to revolutionize respiratory care for millions.
And here's another question regarding the total addressable market. What is the total market for ventilators now?
So there are different numbers depending on report you read. There are reports that talk about $7-10 million. At the respiratory care market level, they talk about almost $7 to $10 billion. At the respiratory care market, it's even close to $30 billion. And that's more or less just the medical devices themselves, without all the costs associated with disposables and other associated treatments. So it's a very, very, very big market. It's dominated by several players. And I think that's also something I do want to emphasize. Because there are so many players there are a lot of people there, and a lot of companies that have a lot to lose with regard to market share. So a new player in a new market with a new technology has the potential to also disrupt, potentially, and create a potential rapid, high growth, rapid impact on an existing market where the need is really well defined.
Another question from our live stream. It seems like the art can really shake up the market. Do you have any third-party research showing potential market share?
There is a lot of available research documents that will show you how the market is divided by multiple players. There are a lot of players in the space, a lot of the well-known medical device companies. The competition between them is very, very fierce for market share. And we believe that this is a very interesting point for a new company to penetrate such a competitive market. But do remember, we're not coming into the market with the same type of technology machine. We're coming with what is potentially meant to be a more superior product with many, many advantages, because we're not going to talk about treating a patient in a coma. We're not going to talk about intubating. We're going to be talking about treating a patient while they're awake, without intubation, without coma, and without the need to wean them off in a lengthy process like noticed or used today with invasive mechanical ventilators. And again, I do want to emphasize for all the listeners, it's the mechanical ventilator that's causing a lot of these complications, damaging lungs, creating pneumonia, and every time this happens, you end up extending the patient's time on the machine. So it's a vicious circle. If you don't get off quickly, you get stuck in a vicious circle. And hopefully, Inspira Art will provide a totally different experience to the future patients.
When physicians implement your technology, what sort of benefits can they expect to gain from using Inspira's technology?
Thank you. So, firstly, I don't know a single doctor that's happy about placing a patient in an induced state of medical coma. It's fighting for the patient. It's nail biting for the doctors. So this is something really complicated. Doctors are very, very much aware of the complications brought on by putting someone on an invasive mechanical ventilator. In many cases, they'll do anything to prevent it because they know that it can become complicated. There may be issues and there's no return. So if you offer doctors, physicians, in any medical condition, the ability or the opportunity to treat a patient while they're awake, while they could potentially be communicating And without replacing an organ function, you are already creating a lot of motivation for the medical practitioner to go down a different medical pathway where he has potentially more control or more access to information. Because when the patient's in a coma on the machine, they're working in the dark. They cannot see what's happening in real time. Things develop, and then it just develops over days. Now, just remember, the Inspira has the higher blood sensor, non-invasive blood sensor capabilities built into it, which means that we're going to be providing them a tool to be able to monitor the patient's medical condition through blood parameters, as well as the system performance. So we're really, really helping them out towards potentially providing a much better patient outcome and a better procedure.
What do you plan to do with the data gathered from Inspira machines?
That has obviously, when it comes to data, there are a lot of rules and regulations. So firstly, we will comply with rules and regulations. Of course, this information could be very key. This could be very useful with regard to potentially identifying different information around patient condition. At this stage, I won't go into it, but of course, there's first, most important is obviously compliance and meeting regulatory requirements in order to safeguard patient information.
Here's another question from our live stream. They ask, do you share Inspira's expected market share?
So with regard to what we're planning to do, there are companies that have worked towards trying to remove the carbon dioxide from the blood. And they can do this in a very limited way. But the holy grail is oxygenating the blood. It's the oxygenation, which is the more majority, it's the larger market, the more impactful market. And this is what Inspira is working to do and aims to achieve. The ability to use very, very small quantities of blood, up to just 1.5 liters of blood per minute, to be able to take a patient with acute respiratory failure, to minimize the need for invasive mechanical ventilation, and to elevate their saturation levels to a level that they would be more stable so that doctors can really treat the medical problem. So going back to your question, there are not companies that we are aware of, and I think the market's aware of, with that capability. There are some companies that have managed to remove the carbon dioxide at a very small level, but we really see this as almost a byproduct in our in relation to what our capabilities are targeted to be.
Aside from hospitals, where else do you see your technology being implemented?
So firstly, let's also just zoom into hospitals for a moment. We plan to start off in ECMO centers and ICUs. But as the Inspira Art is designed to treat patients while they're awake and still breathing, there is the potential that over time we'll be able to migrate the solution outside of intensive care units to large hospitals, clinical hospitals, maybe rural hospitals. So that in itself would create a huge impact because 94% of the ICUs are in metropolitans. Okay, so a large portion of the population doesn't actually have access to ICU level of care in a normal manner. Additionally, maybe over time, there will be access in the emergency market sector. I won't go into it now, but you can understand that if we can provide a solution that can be life-saving or support, sustain life, and the more we penetrate the market and we grow, there is a very strong potential that delivery capabilities and options will grow.
Joe, I'm no longer seeing any questions in the queue. This is just a reminder to our participants on the Zoom call that if you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand tool or type in your question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom window. Okay, Joe, I'm not seeing any more questions in queue. Perhaps you would like to go ahead and we do have a question coming up. I spoke too soon. Matthew. Matthew said he is typing his question. So just give us a few moments here.
No problem.
Okay, here we go. Matthew asked, I understand that you have sufficient funding to get through the initial FDA trial submission. I believe it is for the HYLA or ALICE, and that you have distribution contacts that are contingent on achieving FDA approval. Matthew, is that your entire question? Or perhaps Joe, oh, here we go. Do you believe that you will be able to avoid further dilutionary fundraising?
As I mentioned, the company has funding in order to, we're working on the higher blood studies. We have the FDA submission of the ALICE. The company will continue to work. Next year, hopefully we'll have FDA clearance. I think that we are well funded for those projects. Of course, we also are working on the art, and we've spoken next year about the planned use of the art in a human study in the second half of next year, followed by a larger study. So to a certain point, I think we'll be able to progress very nicely with the two products that are building blocks towards the art. Of course, we have also the art, and that's a bigger project. That's still very strong in the making. In other words, we are going into clinical studies already next year. Well, it's not clinical, it's a human study next year. And I think you can get an understanding based on the burn rate that we have funding that is would serve us for about a year from today.
Matthew follows up with the question. The crux of the question he had asked before is whether you will be able to self-fund development of the art from the current contracts you have from HYLA and the ALICE.
So at the end of the day, in a sense, when you bring a product, we have to bring these products to market, we have to deploy them. If you just look at the medical world, I want to look at a general situation in the medical world. When you come into the medical world, you got to deploy these systems, you got to create clinical data. They'll probably be in different medical institutes for a couple of months, maybe a couple of quarters. You build those relationships and eventually hope that those orders get executed. So there is time, but we do have potential. What I can say is potential, because in our world as a public company, we cannot say that we're doing something until it's been done. But we do have potential by having these two amazing products that are advancing at the pace that they're advancing. We do have the potential to support future activities as we move through. And I think that's the best answer that I could give you, understanding the limitations of the answer that I can provide.
Okay, Joe, I'm no longer seeing any questions in queue. Once again, I have spoken too soon. I have just gotten some more questions. Luca asks, what would you define as your uniqueness in terms of technology? Is it a gas exchanger, the pump, the cannula, or a mix of them? Many others tried to develop less invasive ECLS for respiratory indications, but so far, none of them have been able to drive adoption of the therapy beyond a limited number of reference centers.
Okay, so I want to answer that question in two ways, or in two parts. ECLS is extracorporeal life support. Extracorporeal life support is like ECMO. It's actually it's a much smaller market. It's only about a $700 million market. There are different technologies there. There are ECMOs there. We will also position ourselves in that market with our ALICE. But I don't say it's not that there's no adoption. It's just used in very extreme cases. Okay. Now, how does the Inspira art is using blood oxygenation like ECLS, but ECLS is very, very dangerous. ECLS can cause seizures, strokes, bleeding, and very, very significant other life-threatening conditions. And that's why they'll only use it in a patient where almost everything is failed. Now, what we're doing is we're trying to use blood oxygenation in a much earlier situation. So in other words, in ECLS, they're using 7 liters of blood a minute. We're pumping only 1.5 liters of blood a minute. So it's a different ballgame. It's a totally different market, and what I call a different intent of use, because we're trying to prevent or treat or support acute respiratory care. as opposed to other issues like heart, the heart crashing from a heart attack or the lungs that are completely finished. So we're going to a much bigger market and a much earlier stage. In order to do that, our product has to be much safer and have a lot of technological advantage. Now, back to the first part of the question, yes, there are multiple elements working together that are assisting us to design a system that can do that will do what we plan for it to do. It's several components, and we don't think that it's a very simple thing to do. We don't believe it's a very easy element to penetrate or just easy market to penetrate for competition. And moreover, I do want to also remind you guys about patents. We recently got approval for a very unique dual lumen cannula, which is a cannula within a cannula that was granted by the US. In the second half of this year, we're looking for feedback from the US grant office with regard to our Inspira art. And what's very unique about that patent is that we've not only filed about special technologies and components, we've also filed for the market for the intent of use. In other words, of how to use direct blood oxygenation to prevent the need or minimize the need for invasive mechanical ventilation. So we're not only developing technologies which are multiple to create this capability, we're also have filed patents to hopefully secure the market and intent of use. So if that gives you an understanding that should we have both of them, the wall should be pretty high for anybody that tries to do this. And I can tell you one thing, there are a lot of people interested in what we're doing, a lot of medical device companies that are interested to maintain dialogue with the company. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that.
I am no longer seeing any questions in queue. Joe, perhaps you would like to wrap us up with a closing statement.
Sure. I think, as I promised, took 7 minutes to share with you, just 7 minutes, to share with you why Inspira is a potential RedChip company. We have the potential to create a multi-billion-dollar market. And we're not doing this with one amazing big Inspira art product. We've also worked on turning other capabilities, sub-technologies into standalone products. And we do this for many reasons. We're penetrating the market with capabilities, going through the different processes, but we're also giving you a bit of an understanding about how we are performing and how we're making progress. So look at our past record, see what we've done the last 2 years, have a look at what we're planning, and make a decision whether you think we are a true RedChip company. So I really thank you today for listening in on this presentation.
For more information on Inspira Technologies, reach us at 1-800-RedChip. That's 1-800-733-2447. Please use RedChip's investor information page for Inspira Technologies, IINN info.com. There you can view and download the investor presentation, fact sheet, and sign up for news alerts. Please be sure to visit the Inspira Technologies site. It's inspira-technologies.com. Thanks again, participants, and many thanks to you, Joe.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.